The virtual CISO moment is brought to you by vCISO Services, a leading provider of quality and experienced virtual chief information security officers for small and mid-sized businesses. Check them out at vcisoservices.com. Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to the virtual CISO moment. Steve Mallard joins us. He's an IT pro who's been around in IT for well over 20 years. He's got a master teacher in information technology and infrastructure management and information systems manager for a technical college and private consultant, technical writer, public speaker on cybersecurity, and conference organizer. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Greg. I really appreciate it.
So, a lot of experience doing an awful lot of stuff. I know that I've known you for a long time because we both were in higher ed. I think you
Yes, sir.
started with the Board of Regents around the same time I did, because I started at MTSU, I think in 98-ish. Was that
I
around the
was,
time that you started?
yes, sir. Mine was 99. Sure was.
So, a lot of things have changed. And I realized actually I've been away from MTSU now almost as long as I was there, which is scary to think about. I mean, 12 years now. But please tell us about your path, how you started out in IT and where you're at today.
The biggest thing is I have to back up. Seeing your Desert Storm hat in the background, thank you for your service. I was in the Army also.
Well, thank you for your service.
Yeah. And the biggest thing is I worked on attack helicopters. So I began working with computers in 1983. So in 1983, when I first went to school, I began working with computers. Of course, they were monsters back then to use to calibrate this equipment. And going from there, and getting more and more computer skills in the military, I left the military. And once I left the military, um, I became a nephrology technologist and I began to work in manufacturing. And as a nephrology technologist, that's healthcare, but I work manufacturing also.
And what is a nephrology technology? I'm sorry for interrupting. I don't think I got that out right. Did I pronounce it right?
No, you said it right. Yeah. A nephrology technologist is someone who works on hemodialysis machines and equipment, which are computers that actually dialyze blood or they purify the blood with people that have kidney disease.
Okay.
So then we touch on that type of computer. And then, of course, working in manufacturing, they noticed that I had a skill for building databases. So I began with Paradox 3.5, and then it grew from there. And somewhere along the way, I started working with local law enforcement. And then, of course, the modern PC started to come about in the 90s. I had done the manufacturing, the hemodialysis, or being a nephrology technologist, the military. When the personal PCs came about, a lot of self-taught stuff, started going to seminars, started learning. Then I actually went to school with the college that I'm at now, and I took keyboarding or what have you. And then I had some personal mentors that worked manufacturing, and then it just grew from there. And they wanted me to put together a program. So back in the 90s, we put together what was known as the Computer Operations Technology Program, which later grew to the Computer Information Technology Program, and then what we call today ITIM. But over a series of time, I had both mentors. I was attending schools, and I was attending seminars in any way I could learn computers.
And that brings you to you do a couple of things for the college right now. You're an
Yeah.
instructor and the manager.
Well, actually, now I've kind of stepped out of that. I'm stepping out of that managerial role, and we've got somebody who works IT and does the IT for the college. And I'm actually retiring in 15 working days. And I'll be working with a Department of Defense contractor. And I currently work as the subject matter expert. And I've got a little history I'd like to tell you about on that. Ironically, how I got into cybersecurity was back in 2000. Nobody had a firewall. It was just unheard of. Zone alarms started coming out, and all the software-based firewalls. Windows didn't even have a firewall. Linux had some firewalls that were crude and primitive, or what have you. And me and my counterpart had noticed that we started getting these IP addresses. We didn't have the who is and all this good stuff. So you had to really look them up on IANA, and you really had to dig to see who owned an IP address. And we found out it was Russians and Chinese and Americans, and people were hitting our routers, and they were hitting servers that were not, in essence, what we look at today compared to then. That was just unprotected. And then I said, I've got to know more about security. And I started digging and finding these people that were in IT that had seen the same thing as that I had seen. And the irony is, I want to tell you this, Greg. When I look at this history of how I came to be all the way out of the Army, and I had a lot of mentors and attended different schools and these seminars, when I started talking about cybersecurity, nobody could answer my questions. And we even reached out to not just law enforcement, but state level and on a federal level. And believe it or not, they did not have those cyber forensics crews they have today, even though we've got the 1986 Computer Intrusion Act and all this stuff. So I've watched the evolution of cybersecurity grow over the years, and I've tried to dig in and put my finger on everything. And anyway, so my role is a master teacher. And when we made the ITI program, we've won approximately 16 national awards. We've appeared in Computer World, SC Magazine. We were named in the top 5 best security programs in the nation. Tech Target recognized us. In Computer World, we were recognized as a laureate. And we actually had tied with Duke University, and we had beat out MIT for learning
Wow.
innovation. Swear. And the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, it's kind of hard to put it together in my head, ask us to testify and to come in, and it was talking about the security in collegiate and university medical research facilities. And so went to DC to testify before them. Um, and we've spoke all over the nation, Washington, D.C. to Colorado. And along the way, the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security picked up on that. And because of our experience, they asked us to become subject matter experts for them. And just over the years, when I look at my role primarily to the college is a teacher. But on a side level, as I give up the information management side of it to someone else, um, and I'm still sliding over into that Homeland Security or Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security, where I assist those guys and have assisted them since 2012. And we actually protect or help to protect the infrastructure in the state of Tennessee. And we go down to the Port of Memphis usually every year or two, and we check out the Port of Memphis, and we do vulnerability testing with partners at the Port of Memphis, with the Coast Guard, Homeland Security. And there's a House bill that actually passed and was signed into law May the 19th, I think. Representative Pat Marsh actually put this in place, and it recognizes the Tennessee College of Applied Technology Shelbyville's Security Operations Center and their students for protecting the infrastructure in the United States and for having the first SOC that a student ran, which is pretty cool.
Wow. And having that student experience, I'm sure, a student in cybersecurity trying to break in, having that SOC experience has got to be invaluable. How have you seen that prepare them for their career in cyber?
Oh, wow. We actually just put this SOC in there 2 years ago. We have a facility that's at the Middle Tennessee Education Center in Shelbyville. And we had this room, and the president of our college and I had this vision that we could do something as far as cybersecurity. And I said, we are to put in a security operations center and plant sensors all across Middle Tennessee at different locations under different ISPs, so you could see the hit, so it could become very similar to the National Weather Service. So you could see a pattern on one side of the state go across the state to another side. So it's helped the students for the sheer fact that they can see those scene-based systems, they can see those firewalls, they can see the hits, they see the reality of it. And because they see these sensors across the state of Tennessee, they can compile reports and then take those reports and we send them to the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security to say these are some of the patterns that we see, and then they can share those with MSISAC or anybody that they want to share. And the students actually make the reports where they're exportable, where they can be imported into Fortinet and WatchGuard or whoever, Barracuda. And so we've seen a increase where we have a 95% placement rate and a 98% retention rate, which is just unheard
Wow.
of in
Wow.
colleges. We put out approximately 40 to 60 students annually are graduating. And with a 95% placement, they're not all in cybersecurity, of course. I mean, we have help desk and networking and what have you. But this increase that we've seen in these military bases and these SOCs who reach out and say, and they're saying, "Give me your top-notch students and send the resumes and let me hire these folks." So we've seen just a catastrophic increase.
That's amazing. So how has this your past that you're talking about, how did that lead to, or was it part of you working to bring about the Middle Tennessee Cyber Conference, which has been around for what, about 12 years now?
It's been around for about 12 years. Actually, that was Agent James Cotter of the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security said, "Steve, do you think we could have a cyber conference?" And I said, "I think it'd be great." Now, there were small cyber conferences going around. Black Hat was really beginning to take off, DEF CON, of course.
Right.
And he says, but we need something that educates and doesn't sell. We want folks to be able to sell their products, even the people who come up there and speak, but we want them to come in and educate folks. And I said, yeah, I think we can do this. And when we put it together, it was a 1-day event where we were going to Middle Tennessee State University. Folks would come in. We have about 8 speakers. And within 2 or 3 years, some folks said, "Hey, can we play a capture the flag? But we want it to be different. We want it to be realistic." And we threw that together. Now, the Middle Tennessee Cyber Conference, we haven't missed a year, even with the pandemic. We missed 2 in persons, but we were able to do a virtual capture the flag because we have that security operations center. Of course, we moved some computers over into a DMZ, made them vulnerable. We isolated them and air gapped them, and then we allowed people to attack them. But the Middle Tennessee Cyber Conference over the years has grown. We've brought in people from former NSA. This year we have Neil Bridges. You
Right.
yourself, you're going to be speaking at it, and and not to flatter you, but I've listened to your podcast and they're fantastic. That's not because I'm on your podcast now,
That's all right.
but
I'll pay you the $5
there
afterwards.
you go. But we've had
Thank
people
you.
like Betsy Wodenberg and Jason E. Street, and we've had Secret Service, we've had FBI, we've had U.S. Treasury come in, and now we're reaching out more into that private industry where we have Corey Brown, Corgi, who helps organize DC 615. We have 2 fantastic guys, and I've got an agenda. Brent White, I always forget Brent's name, which is crazy. Him and Tim Roberts give a physical how to break in things. If you've never seen that, it will just blow you away. And they're part of We Hack People. And let's see, Michelle Drolet, who owns Tire Wall. She was the founder and CEO. She's
Right.
coming out of Massachusetts. Um, we've got Peter Gallinari. And if you don't know Pete, Pete is not only a security and data officer. If anybody listening to this podcast Googles him, he's played with some of the largest bands in the 70s as a keyboardist, and he's the most fantastic guy ever. And he knows cybersecurity and he knows everything about data privacy or what have you. Um, you know, uh, Dustin Childs is going to be there this year with Trend Micro. And but the reason I get so excited about it is to watch people's faces and to hear people that are CIOs all the way down to help desk. And when they come and they hear people like yourself or these folks speak, and it's not, this is my product, this is my product, this is my product. And when they're educating and they have something to take away, and we get such positive feedback, and then they can come in for day 2 if they wish to do so. play the capture the flag. We make it realistic, and then we debrief people so they can break in a SCADA device or what have you. We don't do red versus blue. Primarily, they are a red team, and then we educate them on what a blue team could do to secure it. But the Middle Tennessee Cyber Conference during the pandemic, even we wanted to reach out to people, so we reached out to Alyssa Knight, and Alyssa kindly did an interview with us, and she's recognized the most for hacking the police cars, and then later, now she's a movie producer slash cybersecurity guru that I highly admire. Plus, we had people who interviewed, such as Fabian Wassar. If Brett Callow was kind enough to hook me up with Fabian Wassar, and Fabian is one of the most wanted cybersecurity good guys that's out there. And bad guys are even known to write in the ransomware, Fabian, please do not decrypt this. And Fabian is the guy that they're with Emisoft. And but the Middle Tennessee Cyber Conference, the reason I get so pumped up about it, not because I've helped organize it with James, is it allows people to network and become a community. And we've seen people come as far away as New York, and we've had people come out of Europe or what have you, just so they can come down and just meet these speakers for that one day.
And the cost is free, right?
Free, absolutely free. $0. You go in, we have vendors. Generally, those vendors are paying for your, your beverages and your snacks and all that good stuff. And of course, vendors give out swag that we all get. And, but it's just a good place to network with folks and to learn something.
And when and where is it this year?
This year it's going to be September the 13th. It's going to be at the Embassy Suites. And registration is at middletncyberconf.com.
Okay.
And
I'll put that in the show notes, that link. So,
okay, fantastic. We're almost full now, but we still have several seats that are available. Folks are welcome to come. And a lot of times our speakers like yourself and people, I watch you guys, you work the crowds too after hours, and people are coming up and they're shaking your hands and stuff, which is fantastic. Well, but it's coming up in September, so we're only about 50 something days away.
And it's a great experience too. Not only if you've been in cyber for a while. I'm just getting back to those who are starting out, because this is such a big question on LinkedIn about how to get into cyber and the best things to look for. I always talk about networking and trying to absorb as much knowledge as you can. What would you say would be one key bit of advice to give someone who is trying to break into cybersecurity?
Number one, hands-on. Number two, certifications. And when I say that, it's not running out just to get your Security Plus or your CISSP or your CEH. Now, absolutely, you need those. You need those credentials because they're going to help you gain that academic knowledge. But the hands-on portion of it, the state of Tennessee, under the Tennessee Lottery, you can go to school for free if you're a resident of the state of Tennessee. Now, financial aid people across the community colleges and the technical schools can tell you all about that. But if you do not have time, you're a working mom and dad, and the schedule just doesn't meet it, build a home lab, get some virtual machines going, watch podcasts like your own, or David Bombal, or Network Chuck, or there's so many people out there. John Hammond, some really exceptional folks that are out there.
Steve Gibson's one of my favorites.
Steve Gibson, absolutely. Yeah. GRC, right?
Yeah.
And he was
Gibson Research Corporation, I believe it stands for. I always want to say governance, risk, and compliance, but
right.
He had GRC before GRC was cool.
Right. And he was one of the first guys that did Shields Up.
That's right. And I think he says that he invented, or he was at least part of inventing, like the antivirus or something along those lines. I don't know.
Right. I would absolutely believe that. But
and I was just going to I was just
Go
going to
ahead,
say
sir.
that talking about the home lab too. I think that that is so important. I remember just talking about that on LinkedIn this past week when I did some writing back 15, 17 years ago for Computer World, just freelance. And part of it was building a lab at my house. Now, I'd already been in cyber networking. I don't even think we called it cyber back then, but you can get equipment even back then. It's like I ordered some stuff on eBay. You can get like at the time I got hubs for that used to be at a bank. I know because
Oh yeah,
they left the IP address on there. So that was the first thing I checked is like, where'd this come
yeah.
from? But yeah, I definitely you can build a home lab and build it relatively cheaply. And there's nothing that compares with hands-on.
And with people, these things, smartphones, because people have smartphones today, it's it's a prime time right now during the summer. People can go to yard sales and garage sales, and you can get a PC that's a quad core, 8 core with 8 GB of RAM or something, because people are getting rid of them because mom and dad or whoever is using smartphones more and more, and they're streaming videos, and they just don't use PCs like they used to. And as hard as that is to believe, I tell my students that, and then they start bringing in computers, and they go, after hours, can I set this computer up and you show me how to use um, VirtualBox or VMware Player or whatever? And I go, absolutely, because we're, if it was, we teach that in class along with ESXi and some advanced stuff, but if they have not reached that stage, I go, yeah, I'll show you. And then a lot of times what folks will say is, what should I do on this home lab when I get it? If you go up and you subscribe to some of the YouTube channels that you and I have mentioned, and if they're doing something, go out and do it. And if you mess up a virtual machine, big deal. You can just tear it, you can delete it and do it again. And the big thing is, I apologize. And the big thing is you can delete it and you can download the Linux for free, and Microsoft, the 120-day trials. You can download them all
Yep.
day long, and you can run that 120 days so that you can try server or what have you.
Yeah, and there's always like some other free opportunities that are cropping up. I've been listening in on offensive security. They've been running like a free Kali Linux primer, if you will, as
Oh, wow.
if you were actually taking the offensive security, whatever that OSCP course is, 200, I think.
Right.
Now I've never done that, but I've been sort of listening in passively. Wednesdays and Fridays, they've been doing it for an hour each day. I think they're doing it through the beginning of September now. But there's always something cropping up, and so many opportunities for folks to just get out there and learn. I do have to ask you this because I know now I was never a full-time instructor, and but I did teach. I was an adjunct at Middle Tennessee State for a bit, taught computer networking over there in the engineering department, and even just
Mhm.
teaching one course could be a little bit stressful. And you juggling both being, I know you're getting ready to retire, but juggling teaching and managing and all the other stuff you do, setting up the conference and the speaking you do. What do you do to decompress? Because I think it's so important for people to walk away from IT and InfoSec every now and then.
Yeah, it is important because it's always on your mind, especially when you see the news or you have to keep up with trends or what have you. Um, Drones in the
I
background is
noticed
one. I
that.
don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I noticed
Um,
that.
Remote control airplanes, drones, gardening with my wife, seeing grandkids, getting out and traveling. And you've got to learn how to turn that switch off. And for years and years and years, I could not turn that switch off, especially when you have students. It's not a 40-hour-a-week job. And as you know, IT is not certainly not a 40-hour-a-week job.
No.
And sometimes you just have to learn to decompress. And that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah,
Just
decompressing, just thinking about flying. I used to own a little airplane right out there at Shelbyville, and that used to be my decompression. I had a 172. I'd get up there. Sometimes I'd actually fly that up to Murfreesboro to go to work.
so that tells me you knew Mr. Bomar, right?
Um, I,
Bomar Airfield.
it was at Bomar Field. I don't know if I ever met him. The airport manager at the time was Hank Williamson. I remember
Oh, I
that.
know Hank. Oh yeah, absolutely. I knew Hank. Well, we used to go out there and fly all the time. We would
I
save up.
figured probably, yeah.
We would save up $20. Me, and this is even before I went into the military. and Mr. Bomar would take us flying. And I still find flying relaxing. I love it. Love it. Plus the remote control planes and everything else. Yep.
Wow. Well, listen, Steve, this has been a wonderful conversation. I so much appreciate what you're doing for the
No
community.
problem.
All this, it's like it takes so much effort, and there's so much value out of it. I'm very much looking forward. Thank you for inviting me to speak this
Absolutely,
year.
Greg.
I'm very much looking forward to it. Future plans outside of retiring?
When I do retire, like I said, I'm going to work a modified work week with right now what's an undisclosed partner in the Department of Defense who is a contractor.
Great
That's all I can
things.
say right now, but yeah.
No, that's fine. I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you, right?
No.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining us again. The Middle Tennessee Cyber Summit, Cyber Conference. It is September 13th at Embassy Suites in Murfreesboro. Check out the registration. We'll have the URL in the show notes, and very much appreciate you coming on.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Greg.
Thank you. And everybody stay secure.